So this week, guys, we are talking about families and how you bring families into your organization. If you're a dementia care organization, you provide care for folks living with brain change, possibly dementia, maybe just aging care. Um, how do you include families? So while I pull up the poll that people shared with us, guys on this call, what are some of the things that you've seen in the past that have been either creative, successful, or maybe not so successful with bringing families in?
I'm hoping people might be able to jump off that last line that you left with, Amanda. Maybe they could put in the chat things that really just went south. We're talking organizations, right? It's the first place we go to, those horrible experiences. We're trying to be supportive and it didn't work. In fact, it just turned out it was a bunch of people hanging out together in negativity and not able to learn and advance, and the grief was piling on and the complaints. And that's kind of why we're here, I think.
Oh, so people tried to come together and the organization tried to bring folks in, um, but it ended up without a lot of guidance, turning into stories that centered around the negative aspects of what was happening. And
Right.
without that positive guidance, without a goal, a shared goal, the goal became let's share the things that we don't like about this thing. Because as humans, that's sort of in our nature. If we don't like something, it's much easier to notice that and point it out. So, Beth, that was kind of a cycle. Okay, what else?
Well, I was going to say that sometimes it does work is a support group for family members. It does often go down, but sometimes it does work.
So you've seen the other side of the
I
support
have.
group, Shelley, where
Yeah.
it truly is a support group and it does get people into the space in a shared space that they can find support with shared experience.
Yes.
Okay,
But
cool.
but you need somebody facilitating it that doesn't let it go there.
Because that tendency is still there.
It's still there.
Okay. Tipa, what about for you?
I would say that one of the things that many organizations are really pretty good at is there's a person living with dementia and there's this other person that's been a primary supporter. And so many organizations are getting pretty decent and good at figuring out how to be supportive of that other individual. As a matter of fact, it's how the Alzheimer's Association started, was being supportive of the other individual and not of the person living with. I mean, they were considered the victim, the person that wasn't the one who really could understand or appreciate what was happening. There was all kinds of mythology around it and misinformation. But helping one other human being is a mode. What I think is classically not done most of the time is taking that whole group that were surrounding this individual and figuring out from the outset, how is this change changing all of these dynamics? And I think some organizations have family counselors or family therapists, but it's relatively rare that we look at a whole family in multi-generations in the family and see how we can be supportive of all those individuals and find new or sustaining roles for all of them to play in this transition that might be going on from 70 to 80% of all care delivered by family and friends to now we have a supportive organization providing something. And how does that transition?
Yeah, because we go from pretty much isolation, is where a lot of these relationships end up going until what? I can't do it anymore. And then that's when we enter this new relationship with your organization. Hmm. Boy, so you're like the rebound every time. And it's not usually a good breakup. It is, there are some folks, some families that pre-plan and they make the shift before things get to the place where I just can't. I would say they were in the minority of folks out there, and we're still missing quite a few members of the community even when someone moves in. How many friends transition in to come and visit? How many grandchildren? How many friends of grandchildren that you would have in your home versus in an assisted living? So these kinds of missing pieces are really hard.
I think the other thing that traditionally happens is we say, we're going to take over care. Now you go and do the other thing that you've been doing before, go back to the daughter role, go back to the husband role, go back to the wife role, go back to the granddaughter role. But I'm not sure how well we do that transition in many settings. And I think there's often oh, she's doing great. And we think, but how could she be doing great? We struggled so much. And then unfortunately, sometimes the bottom drops out, or the transition between admissions and care is not well supported for families. And again, it's for families. Some people have a plan, but again, it's often for one individual, not for a whole family. How's this transition and friend network and social network going to occur in a supported, structured way?
Yeah, so it becomes really sticky and really challenging. And I wanted to share here the poll that you guys answered out there in LinkedIn world. And I'll just ask you guys, what do you notice about the poll here, about what we're providing for families? So senior care is more than just the individual. And that's what Thibaut is talking about. Does your organization offer anything for families? And so right now, just for those of you who can't maybe see it or read it, or I'm going to read it out. So educational opportunities is about 55% of you. Volunteer opportunities sitting at 14%. Books, videos, resources sitting at 5%. And outreach or support groups is at 27%. So what stands out to you guys as you look at these numbers?
For such a set of complex diseases, the surprise I had was resources. Even if you remove trying to figure out what books or videos that I would facilitate, just some sort of resources on any of these diseases. I mean, there's 100 to 120 different forms, types, and causes. You'd think some information might be out there.
Oh, so Beth, you're kind of bringing up something, and I wanted Dan to share just a minute about a blog that he's written and rewritten in a few different forms about his dad, who he thought when he was an adult, Dan's an adult, he would just do everything for his parents and that would make them happy. So I wanted you to just share a little bit about that aha moment that you had.
Yeah, it was just that idea of my parents raised me and I'm grown and they've done so much for me my whole life. Now I want to return the favor. I want to show them they did a good job. So let me do everything for you. I want to cook. I want to clean. I want you to come over and just put your feet up and just relax. And when there was stuff going on at home, at work, I didn't turn to them and ask for advice. And even when I mentioned something, he's like, oh, would you like me to help? I'm like, no, I got it. Don't worry, because I didn't want to trouble him. And then I saw a commercial one time, and that combined with working with Thibaut for years, it was actually a German Christmas commercial, and it showed this old man like pulling out a kettlebell, and he would try it, but he was hiding his efforts, and he kept trying, and people were looking at him weird, and finally at the end he gets to do it. He's lifting it up, and no one knows why. And at the end, he picks up what I can only assume is his great granddaughter, and holds her up so she can put the star on the tree. And it's like, here's a guy who's clearly loved, but he wants to be valued. He wants to see it still has value. And I saw that, and it blew me away. And I started thinking about, how am I showing my parents that I still value them as parents? You never stop being a parent. And so I started asking my dad for help around the house. He can't physically go out and do this stuff, but when we had a roof issue, he was calling contractors and getting all these quotes and information for them. My mom, when we bring the kids over, she'd tell me to put my feet up. She's like, you got the kids all day, you're working. I've got days to clean up. Just let me do this. Let me be your mom. Let me be your dad. Involve me in your life. And when that hit me, completely changed my relationship. We always had a good relationship, a very good relationship. I love my family, but all of a sudden I realized I need my dad to be my dad, and my dad needs to be my dad. And I can't stop that, and I don't want to, and it's gotten better and better ever since.
So this idea of what we ask folks to do once we take over the care, how often do we then lose the value of the relationship in that family mode? And as you said, Beth, we're not providing resources to keep that value up of understanding and educate. We're doing some educational opportunities in the form of, I would guess, trainings. You guys can chat. Shelley and Matthew are kind of watching the chat, but I'm guessing these are more trainings and then support groups. Those are two for sort of comfort modes. How could we start to teach people how to re-enter that role of daughter, wife, husband, mom, dad, sister? How do we as an organization start to build those value statements back in? So PAC team, any thoughts on ideas of how we could shift this picture here by using what's a comfort, a training or a support group or something along those lines? And I had a couple ideas, so I'll share a couple ideas and then I'll pass it over to you guys to give you a second to think. So we have this new book, and it's called Grandma's Living with Dementia. Oh, Shelley has hers. Okay. So what would it be like if we were to run a book club on a children's book?
Now that number of words, I'm sure I could handle. I gotta be honest.
Because what's the challenge with a book club with a chapter book?
Oh, fitting it in.
How many people we do a book club in my neighborhood, and how many people come and say, well, I didn't quite finish the book?
Yeah, they're the brave ones that actually came.
Exactly. So we have these great resources, and this one is actually really meant for kids. Maybe you could just offer a kids book reading, and guess what the families get to take home with them?
Guess you might be able to see the kids.
Yeah, so we get to have the kids in, which is really fun and really exciting for everyone. But we're also educating the kids on how to respond, on how to start to understand that all dementias don't look the same. And in fact, here are some of the challenges we might experience when you're here visiting grandma, aunt, uncle, whomever. And here's what we can do about it. Here are some ideas. So this is the kids' book. The Dementia Caregiver Guide is another great book to use as a book club because it is pretty short and it goes by gem states. And there's some cool pictures, so you could actually go and try it out. What a fun way to incorporate some experiential learning into your family's education experiences. Oh, and by the way, take the resource home. And Debbie, you have another one there.
I do. This is Understanding the Changing Brain. And it's got some great graphics, but it's also got information that helps us understand the course of dementia and how we can be really effective.
Yeah, and one of the things I like about that book is you could just take a chapter and let's just read this chapter this month and then come back and discuss it.
And what I was going to bring up is for those of us who aren't big joiners of groups. I mean, there are people out there. I'm just saying there's a few of us out there that we do group work because we know the value of group work, but it's not our preferred mode of operating. We like to take something, go off with it and explore it ourselves, and then come back with some questions perhaps, or some observations. And so I think one of the things that the difference between the numbers of the educational opportunities and the resources, I see us maybe trying to be very much trying to get people in and in connection physically or cognitively at least, and less opportunity for me to take something and explore it on my own and then maybe bring it back. So the idea of lending libraries or short little resources like, like let's take a mini poster or let's watch a video, go watch a video. Here's a guide. I'm going to ask you some questions and see how you could respond to those. And then we are going to have a group discussion if you'd like to come to the group discussion. Because for me, one of the big differences between a support group and something where you give me a resource, you give me a guide, and then I come back, is that I get to do some things in my own way. And then when we get together, cool, I can share out and I can observe. I'm part of a group, but I don't have to learn that way because for some people, they need solitude for learning. I mean, and I think that idea of whether you're a kid or whether you're a grown up, your learning style is a learning style to respect. And I think sometimes we're trying to do maybe too many things in one foul swoop instead of really going, different people have different styles. Let's see if we can figure out which one is a match for different people and support them where they are.
So the idea of a book club or a resource group or something else, seeing if we can build that into the fabric and the framework, but not expecting to do it all on this 1 hour session when you bring people into your building. The other thing that seems to be a comfort zone for you guys is a bit more of a training, an educational opportunity. But I'm going to challenge you a little bit to start to think about, as Teepa mentioned earlier, how many folks living with dementia are welcome in these educational sessions. If we're closing the door on any one group specifically, what is that telling to the others in our community? Especially if they're the folks living in our community. Us versus them. And there's a challenge here because it can be hard to figure out, how do I set up a positive experience that allows people to do things that they can do, but also allows them to be in partnership or family group at this experience or activity. So a support group where I'm sort of pouring my heart out and saying things that I don't necessarily want my partner to hear is not necessarily a great place to have a partnered session. So what are some ideas, guys, that are good, engaging family or supporting the family role, the traditional family role experiences that you've seen or that you can think of to give some of these organizations out there?
Well, Amanda, how about activities that families and the person living with dementia can do together? Outdoor activities or, outings, perhaps, where family members are invited to go along and just be part of the fun.
Love that, where the focus is actually not on just standing across from someone and staring at them and figuring out what I'm going to say. When words are changing and I don't have the skills to know how to communicate. Having something where we can both stand side by side and focus on, whether it's a simple activity, but even me doing it successfully is not the point. And I think that's, Amanda and Teepa, this is what we've seen again and again with the engagement, is it really is about the process. And sometimes kids are that wonderful go-between where I can let go of the fact that, okay, it is literally gluing noodles on a piece of paper, all the stuff we did even in the 70s and the 60s. There's not a right or wrong, and no one has to, there's not some product I'm trying to hit. It truly is just being together and seeing what comes of it.
Well, and I think too, to go along with that is being alongside of them. You're not stuck for ideas a lot of times, but also you see what they're capable of. You're not looking at them and seeing what they used to have. It's like, oh, wow, I didn't know Dad could do this, and all of a sudden you start to focus on abilities. And then that only can lead to better things.
And how different is that than telling a family member, don't come at 2 o'clock because they're going to activities at that time. Come afterwards or come late in the afternoon.
Yeah, we don't want you to come and ruin stuff, is the message. And we don't mean it. We don't mean to say it like that. But it's well, don't come at lunch because it's really hard to get everybody to get their food. And if you come, she's going to want to talk to you and then she won't eat. And then, so figuring out how to have that setup that can be successful for a family, but truly thinking about activities and things that we would do communally as a family that is a bit of that old comfort zone. Teepa, go
So
ahead.
I'm going to see if we could combine letters, which are something that we learn early on. Usually we can recognize letters. We may not be able to read words if we're having trouble and we're young and we're old or we're having more cognitive change. Letters. Then we have music, letters, and then we have some kind of background, some kind of shared background as a family. Often things we eat or like to eat, don't like to eat, things we like to do, things we don't like to do. So my favorite kind of activity is to either get paper and print out a grid of letters or get Scrabble tiles, 2 or 3 boxes of them, or bananagram tiles, and you put them out on the table. And the first part of the activity is turning them over. Now, what that means is we're actually doing some cognitive manipulative work, but we can have a whole family working on that. And if we have trouble sharing, we can give each person a little pile to work with. And so they get all their letters turned out. And then we say, well, line them up so you'll be able to see them. Okay. And now we are looking for what we eat for breakfast. Okay, everybody? Something you eat for breakfast. And I'm going to ask Matthew, what's something you eat for breakfast, Matthew? What do you like to eat?
Eggs.
Eggs.
Yeah.
Okay, so eggs. So does hey, Debbie, do you have an E? We need an E.
So you're
Okay.
kind of tapping into what families tend to do after dinner or on Saturday mornings. This idea of Wheel of Fortune.
Or game
When you
night.
stay home sick from school, what is the show that everybody watched?
The Price is Right.
This idea that as humans, we like the aspect of a game, especially if the rules can be bent, especially if there's not a particular right or wrong. For some people, they need to have a competition. So if you've got those family members coming in, know that they're going to want some aspect of a win, and they're okay with a team win as long as there's a goal and a purpose. So Teepa, you're pulling out these what seems so natural and simple to us as engagement leaders, but we often exclude our families from being engaged. We want to bring them in for the pretty stuff. We want to bring them in for the beautiful walkthrough. We want to show them the art on the walls. We want to show them this really put together image. And what's reality? I mean, everybody here, how many of you would love to take someone through your home on a Thursday around 7:30 p.m. and show them what you guys are up to?
Do you see the curtain? There's a reason for the curtain. Yeah, don't go behind the curtain unless you want to see what it's really like back there. I mean, yeah, that's sort of and so whether it's emotions or whether it's stuff or whether it's environment or whether it's time, that sense that we all have stuff we don't want to share, but can we find some things we can share that give us a sense of relationship and connection?
And keeping it small. These book clubs, these engagement opportunities, these music trivia nights, games that we can play as a team get to be those roles that I used to be, maybe a little different, but still connecting in a way that is not a care first relationship. Allowing families and friends, maybe inviting people in who don't have someone anymore. to see if you can still build these places of communication and connection. If you have volunteer opportunities, great step. Don't bring volunteers in though, unless you have a job for them. One of the hardest things to do is volunteer when you show up and they say, just have a conversation. Guys, we know what's happening and changing when someone's living with dementia is often language is being lost. Telling me as a volunteer to have a conversation, you're setting me up to maybe not want to come back the next time. And it took a lot for me to get here. It took a lot for me to let go of all that stuff that was sort of keeping me from visiting, the fear, the anxiety, the past relationships, the bad care situation that, especially if I'm a family or a friend, and I may be terrified that I'm going down that same path. If I've come into your space, we got to start from the day one engaging and providing opportunities that we can both be successful in a joint engagement way. So purpose and value.
Amanda,
Yeah.
take a look. This is one of the folks we've done some work with in the past, Mirador, and it comes out quarterly, and it has a host of activities in it and lots of visuals. And so this could be a great, and I'm going to go back to resource for families for you to provide a few copies of this, because within it, it has, this journal particularly is on skylines and avenues. And that's a mural from a location. And on this one, we've got word search. We've got the old hidden stuff in the picture. And so we also have then a craft activity and some suggestions for other things. And so when I say resources, highlights, things that, multi-generational, look at providing something for somebody to have in their hands that we can share out. Ooh, did you know that, now this is interesting, some early street food back in the day, and I'm going to show you a picture to see if this helps you figure out what day and back I'm talking about. Got it? What are you thinking?
Ancient Egypt.
Ancient Egypt.
Ancient Egypt, they had street food. Not sure I want it, but apparently fish was the street food of choice. Yeah.
Seems a little risky.
Yeah. Well, in Thailand, you can do quail eggs.
Oh.
There you go. Oh, there's all kinds of stuff. But all of a sudden, depending on capacity and ability, if we have a triad, not a dyad, but a triad, we have, a person living with, we have a family member in support, and maybe we bring a kid, maybe bring a teenager, maybe we bring a friend. But the three of us now have something we can do together that allows each of us to see what the other is good at, maybe where they're having some trouble, and would help us figure out what is possible. And if there's somebody in the organization who's participating or observing, that could give them added ideas and thoughts about other opportunities to provide for the various members of that group, and how two of these triangles, when you fit them together, might actually go to a larger group, and then we can build out to where this becomes a community thing.
So this idea of community, though, doesn't happen on one person's shoulders, but it generally starts with one person with some skill. One person who's willing to shake things up, to run that book club, to run that engagement opportunity after a very long day, when it's more comfortable for families to come in. Because running an 11 a.m. session, you kind of cut out everybody who's working. And that can be really challenging, because I want to be part of it, but if every time doesn't fit, And we have a lot of people's schedules that we're working on. So it has to be something that we're doing as a team. But if you're interested in how do we teach volunteers, how do we teach families to approach differently? How do we do this so that people can feel successful? They can go in and have a good connection from the beginning. Maybe consider one of our trainer courses or our champion courses. Our champion courses are really focused on the skills of approach. So being able to, as a husband, a wife, a daughter, go in and say, "Hey, Dad," instead of, "Hey, do you remember me, Dad? We're gonna go play something together. Is that okay?" Because what's the reaction I'm probably gonna get? I've already started off on the wrong foot, and I'm asking a yes or no question, which if you take our champion courses, you'll know that's not the way, because you can find a better way that's a little more strong. It uses the prefrontal skills that are still there. I can offer you a this or that. Ooh, hey, Dad, is a first step that so often gets overlooked. So it's not overnight, but it does take some real teamwork. I'm going to show the 6 pieces of the puzzle for the organization here. And the organization includes really everyone and the structure of the organization. So it's not just the people in the organization. Talking about the environment, do you have a space that would feel friendly to do something like a games night that's 20 minutes long? That's not super loud, that doesn't take away from dinner, that doesn't take away from this, that doesn't take away from that, and maybe adds value. Could you set up a space that would make sense and has a platform where the judge, the person in charge, the speaker could be seen and heard by everyone, knowing that there may be some hearing issues, knowing that there may be no microphone? How do you think about the timing? We talked a little bit about being cautious and aware of all of the different schedules of the families and the friends. Maybe it's reaching out to local high schools and bringing in students that are servant leaders and trying to build their volunteer hours. But with some skill and practice, it becomes a real engagement opportunity that families can become part of. So really trying to think about outside of the box activities that provide a resource. Maybe it's the Mirador magazine. Maybe it's a book that you offer for free when people come in that they take home with them. Giving people that group space to get excited about something, but something to take home and walk and learn and study on your own, if that's more your style. And then reconvening in a month, not leaving too much time in between those visits so that it doesn't feel brand new and fresh every single time. It starts to get into a routine that we can all expect and follow.
Oh, and I just want to say, if you guys think that we're just talking talk, in Hillsborough, North Carolina, we're working on walking the walk. And we're actually really on Friday mornings doing a variety of activities that we encourage everybody to come to. And starting soon, we're going to be doing more days of the week where we're really trying to bring individuals, but individuals plus others, plus kids, plus adults, plus community members together to start looking at this thing we call brain change as something we all have. And some of it is directional, and some of it is momentary, and some of it is emotionally driven or situationally driven. But the reality is, we're in this mix too. We are not immune to the idea that we've got to figure this out so that everyone does better than we're currently doing, because we still believe that we aren't where we'd like to be if we were to start to develop that brain change that everybody so doesn't want to have, and that the only way to deal with it is to keep our own brain change happening in a valuable and helpful way, and be inclusive.
So I'm going to pause here and ask this team, and if anybody's put it in the chat, you can share out other ideas. What are some of the big ahas or big ideas that you guys have to help keep families and how to talk to kids and how to talk to adult children, teenagers? What are some of the ideas that you're taking away from today or that you came up with on the call of what organizations can start to offer?
Yeah, not being an engagement leader, not being an occupational therapist. I'm literally thinking like the summary of this is just so amazing. The first one I think of is just keeping it short. Knowing you're talking about changing brains and abilities, and you're talking not just about the people that may be residents or may actually have a diagnosis, but actually families and children. Keeping things about 20 to 25 minutes really is a great place to call it. And if people know when it starts and when the activity is going to end, is that a low effort that I might be able to go to? And then the ideas came from that low effort angle.
So even if an activity is only 20 minutes, still budget an hour's time.
Oh, yeah.
Don't forget about that transition time because as an organization leader, if you're thinking people are going to show up at the time, stay 20 minutes and then leave, I'm so sorry. I hate to tell you this out there, but that's just the prime time engagement. You got to build a buffer of about 15 to 20 minutes on either side to allow for those restroom breaks and the walk down the hallway to explore if you've got beautiful art, well, people are going to want to look at it. And it provides a great connection before we even get into this activity. So encouraging families to get there early if they can to aid in the transition. But if all I can commit to, as Beth said, is 20 minutes, tell me what the 20-minute window is because I may be screaming in on two wheels, but I will be there for the fun part. And then I want to get out because I want to have that memory of my dad when I'm walking home.
And for the folks who aren't wheeling in at the last minute, the setup time and the takedown time from that activity can be an opportunity for purposeful activity and a feeling of value, getting things out, getting things set up. And we've talked about the importance of fun, but we didn't talk about how important it is to feel that sense of purpose and value. And when everything's done for you and you just sit there and it's all set up, it takes something away. So use
bringing
that.
back in that piece of value and purpose. I don't want to be entertained for the rest of my life. I mean, it's fine for a 30-minute. How long are TV shows? There's a reason. You don't want to watch it for 24 hours.
And I might have just as much fun getting the tiles out and putting them on the table and cleaning up as I would sitting there.
And that's all
doing-
you wanted. You were happy with that, and that was great. And you love watching Shelly do all the words. That's cool. But you don't want to do them.
Yeah, because I was going to say that's more fun for me than sometimes playing the game. So it is purposeful, but it's also fun.
Yeah. And for me, it reminded me as I was listening to everyone talk about the value of really knowing love languages, and that there's estimated to be 5 of them. And one of them are words of affirmation. Wow, you got that word. That's great. Another one are acts of service. Here, could you help me with this? Oh, you thought I was going to do it for you. No. Acts of service, they get a chance to serve. And then there's gifts. Oh, that was, wow, you put them in, I am so grateful. Wow, I don't have to do that. That was such a gift. Mm-hmm. And then there's quality time. Yeah, I really liked the time I spent. That time that I spent, that was really valuable. And that time that you spent and that time we were together, yeah. And then finally, that last part of physical touch.
Well,
we come together and we're touching things, but then touching one another.
And if we do it in this group setting where we as a skilled professional are guiding families to see what's possible, now when they come to do one-on-one visits, guess what they now have that they didn't have before? How many of them have been to an engagement training or activities planning, or they know how your activities run, they know what people can do? So this, you're providing teaching and an educational opportunity, but you're also giving a resource of something I can go and take into this space because I start to recognize that love language of my person, whoever my person is. I start to realize what makes them tick, what makes them feel valuable, what makes them feel purposeful, and what also makes me feel valued and purposeful. Because if I come in and it's not a great experience time and time again, guess what starts to happen? And how many of you out there have seen your family slash volunteer pool go down over time because it's just too much, it's too hard. Change is too hard. Okay, anybody else, things that you want to make sure we take away from this session?
I just think of like the summary pieces that I always try to remember. It's that starting and being willing to start really small. I mean, if this is really kind of a new and reimagining skill of engaging with families, because we've lost so much skill over starting not only small in time, but small in activity, small in number of people, maybe even picking your comfort zone, trying out an activity with, as Teepa said, that language of love is, wow, Amanda, you got some experience with this. I could really use your help. I want to try out a new activity, and I'm thinking I might be able to get your feedback.
And really asking for maybe 2 solid families that you know will show up, because I'm also here to tell you, post-pandemic, people are not coming out like they used to. So if you were thinking this thing's going to be a hit because you marketed it and you put it out there and you're going to have all these people show up, don't get discouraged from day one when the numbers are much smaller than what you thought. It's about routine and ritual. And when you start to build it in and you let your families know time and time again, we're doing this every Friday, we're doing this on the first Friday of the month, pick something that has a routine to it. Because if you make it a routine, people start to recognize the routine and can build into their routine.
Mhm.
Everybody can't turn on a dime. Schedules are hard. But by inviting the family in and telling them who should come, so be specific. We want families, we want friends, we want kids, all ages welcome, as many people welcome, or we want just a husband, wife, a spouse, and it's only this group, it's only from this space. Be specific about what you're asking for because people really want to know what the rules are so they can follow them. Go ahead, Shelley.
Yeah, just a question. I don't know if this would work or not. Could we do some virtual piece with it or an opportunity for people to watch it before?
Yeah, if your organization is really good with tech and you could live stream it on a private channel, maybe create your own Facebook group, maybe create your own YouTube channel.
Mhm.
Those things are fairly easy if you have somebody who understands that world
Right.
to do, and you could really and truly stream it live for folks that can't make it. And what a great opportunity to have a community outside of this community when sometimes timing is really hard or I can't be in person because COVID is still here. Yeah, great idea, Shelley. All right, folks. Oh, Teepa has one more thing.
One final thing, if you're unfamiliar with our 8 S's for successful activities, you might want to check that out. It's keep it short, keep it simple, keep it small, make sure it's a circadian match. It's at the right time. So sort of an SC, we cheated. It's the right space. You have that space. You have that social support that's a good matchup. You also have that sensory match that people like. And then finally, it's something that's going to be satisfying. And if you put all those S's together, you're more likely to have something that families and individuals tend to want to come back to versus something that was overwhelming or underwhelming or not a good match by thinking ahead and planning ahead. So that's my last little contribution, and that's a resource that we have available for folks.
So if you're really wanting to try this thing, bringing families, bringing your community in, not just for marketing purposes, not just to fill spaces that you need to fill, but instead to truly rebuild relationships for the folks living in your community so that people can have a sense of family and friendship again. Reach out to us if you're not sure how to get started. We've got those books, we've got lots of resources, and maybe just becoming an engagement leader yourself would be something that would be a way to get started with some of those engagement tasks that we talked about. All right, folks out there, thank you so much for joining us on this lovely Tuesday morning for many of us. Some other times for others, but we will see you in about a month's time, and we will be just after our conference. So if you're in North Carolina or willing to go to North Carolina, November 13th through 15th, we are going to be in person in Cary, North Carolina, and we also are running a gala to support the Snow Approach Foundation, as Tifa mentioned, in Hillsborough. So come check us out, reach out if you have questions, and don't stop trying to invite people in. I know it can be scary.
And we also offer it virtually for those of you who can't make the trip. We'll come to you if you have internet connections. So just keeping in mind, we don't want your ability to travel to limit your ability to participate. So either way.
And if you're living with dementia out there and you'd like to join our conference, you actually can join for free. We sponsor spots for folks living with dementia. So please, everybody, anybody, reach out to us, and we'll see what we can do to support you as you try to support those living with dementia. So thanks, guys.
There's a link in the chat.
Thanks, Shelley. All right, guys, have a great rest of your Tuesday.